very good morning to each and every one of you, and thank you so much for coming. And welcome to the September meeting of the Infrastructure, Investment and Inclusive Growth Scrutiny Board. Good to see you all and all our guests as well. A very warm welcome again to Councillor Billy Flynn, who has been appointed to this scrutiny board. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, that's nice. And thank you to Councillor Alderson for all his contribution to the board's work over the last few months. So this meeting will be webcast. The link to view that recording is live or archived format is on the meeting's web page. So just to remind attendees to kindly mute all your microphones when you have finished speaking. So for the benefit of the public and those watching the webcast, members would now be invited to introduce themselves, and starting with you, Councillor Hamilton.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Sharon Hamilton, representing Moortown and Meanwood Ward.
Good morning, I'm Isaac Wilson, Councillor for Wheatwood Ward.
Morning, everyone. I'm Nicole Sharp, Councillor for Temple Newton Ward.
Morning, Councillor Arif Hussain, Gipton and Hackles.
Good morning, Michael Miller, Councillor for Kippax and Methley Ward.
Morning, John Garvani, Councillor for Horsforth Ward.
Morning, everyone. Councillor Mohammed Shazad, Moortown and Meanwood Ward.
Morning, Mike Foster, elected member for Ardsley and Robin Hood.
Morning, Councillor Neil Buckley, or Woodley Ward.
Morning, Billy Flynn, Councillor for Adel Wharfdale Ward.
Morning, Councillor Sandy Lay, Otley and Yeadon Ward.
Thank you, councillors. And I am Councillor Abigail Marshall Katung, the chair for this board.
Becky Atherton, Principal Scrutiny Advisor.
Thank you very much, Becky. Right, so due to staffing capacity in our governance team today, we will not have any governance officer. So Becky is going to be covering that role. So please do bear with her and be kind to her as well. Okay, so Becky, could you kindly take us through agenda items 1 to 5?
Item 1, appeals against the refusal of inspection documents. There are no appeals today. Items for exclusion. Item 2, there are no items excluded from the public domain. Item 3, late items. There are no late items of business. Item 4, declarations of interest. Can I ask members to disclose any interest in accordance with Leeds City Council's Code of Conduct? I will take silence as none. And then item 5, apologies. Apologies have been received from Alison Lowe, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Pryor.
Thank you very much, Becky. Right, agenda item number 6, and that's minutes of the last meeting held on the 19th of July, 2023. And we are meant to approve as a correct record of the minutes. I will now invite any comments on the minutes from board members. Any comments, please, from the minutes of the 19th of July? I take it we're all happy because you can't be reading it now. Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. Right, moving to agenda item number 7. And that's our future talent plan update. Thank you. I can see Eve and I can see Martin here. Is that you, Martin?
Yeah.
I better put my glasses on. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming. So just a brief introduction on this one, this item. So this scrutiny board received an initial update on the development of the future talent plan in September last year. So about 12 months ago. This paper and the presentation we are about to hear will provide an update on the progress made against the action set out in the plan over the last 12 months. Members who also sat on the board in the last municipal year will recall the discussion in March 2023 about the refresh of the inclusive growth strategy. There are some very clear ways in which this report links to the refreshed inclusive growth strategy, which was considered by Executive Board on the 20th of September. Becky therefore circulated those executive board reports by way of context to this discussion to each and every one of us last week. So I do hope all board members have been able to read that. So first of all, Eve, could you kindly introduce yourself and your team? And then I'm happy for you to start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. My name is Eve Roothouse. I'm Chief Officer for Culture and Economy. And so I have oversight of both our inclusive growth strategy and our future talent plan. And with me, I've got Martin Long.
Hi, good morning. I'm Martin Long. I'm Head of Employment and Skills.
So we've prepared some slides to walk you through this morning before we go into discussion. There's a lot to take in. So we will circulate the slides afterwards so that you can take in some of the detail, which we may spend less time on during the conversation. Chair, you already did a fantastic context setting piece for this piece of work. But if I just kind of recap for everyone how the Future Talent Plan came about. Becky, are you driving the slides? Would you mind moving on to the first slide? Thank you. What we're going to do in our presentation is talk a little bit about that context. Then Martin's going to say something of how the Employment and Skills Service is organised, because that's important to understand in terms of before us going into what we've been delivering over the last 12 months. We'll then give some examples of specific interventions that have come about as a result of the Future Talent Plan and some of their impacts. And then briefly explain about data and reporting that we provide. Again, there's some slides in the deck that you can look over afterwards in detail on some of that. It's more a reminder of the information that members receive in relation to employment and skills. Thanks, Becky. So the Future Talent Plan was developed in response to a period of real uncertainty post-COVID-19. So members will recollect some of the discussions we've had at Scrutiny, for those of you who've been on the Scrutiny panel in previous years, around the instability that was caused by COVID in terms of large numbers of people leaving the labour force and becoming inactive, issues around health, but also accelerated trends in the economy around uptake of digital, for example, and our move towards a green economy. All of those trends meant that we looked at where we were as a council in terms of understanding what we need to do on skills. And we decided we needed to develop a future talent plan with the city. So the plan was launched in September 2022, and it followed a period where we had worked with the city to develop that. And we did that in a really collaborative fashion, using a tool which was, we worked with a partner called Clever Together, and we were able to get responses from right across the city, every postcode, and skills providers. So it's a really robust plan in that respect in terms of reflecting what the people of Leeds feel they need. The overall kind of vision for the plan is around having a globally competitive city where we work together across those boundaries to enable the right opportunities for people and businesses to thrive in the context of that rapidly changing labour market, but making sure that nobody is left behind. That's really, really important for us in terms of being able to be on that front foot for delivering inclusive growth and making sure that the people that live here, that grow up here or move here are able to play their full part in our economy. So we've made some significant progress, and Martin's going to walk us through that now.
Thanks, Eve. Next slide, please. I feel like Chris Whitty now. So I thought just to start with, I thought it was important to set out the context in terms of what the Employment and Skills Service does. And it's, I suppose there's a large extent is that strategic role in terms of developing and monitoring and the future talent plan and how we bring the kind of business, people and education together to make sure that we deliver on those outcomes in that plan. But then there's also an operational role in terms of we have a significant delivery, both in employment support and in skills delivery, particularly adult and community learning. And those, I suppose we focus on those that are furthest away from the labour market that need the support the most. And there's lots of other providers in the city that do recruitment and talent strategies, but where they're mainly to focus on the ones that aren't getting that support from the kind of mainstream provision. So we deliver around 3,000 people into work every year, and that's quite a big achievement because it's like I said, it's those people that really need more long-term support and have bigger barriers. And we run between 4,000 and 6,000 adult learning courses depending on enrolments and how that happens. And all that data is in the pack, so I won't go through it, but it's just important to set that out in terms of that dual strategy operational role. Next slide, please, Becky. And then just important to build on that to say that we've got a focus in our priority wards and neighbourhoods. So we did over 15,500 people supported through over 100 events in the communities last year, whether that's small recruitment workshops, we down to things like tech and tea chats, where we have someone that will go into a community centre, talk to a group of people about how to get into the tech sector whilst they have a cup of tea and coffee, and just keep it really simple and things like that. All the way up through to the events we do in the arena and things where we focus particularly on people from the priority neighbourhoods. And we work with partners across the council from children's services and housing and planning to make that happen. So I just thought it'd be useful to set that out. And then the next slide is just a quick overview of some of that. And I'll go through that as we start doing the future talent plan update. But so 14,000 people accessed employment skills support in 2022-23, 3,500 people were given a new skill or a qualification through our learning program. 3,000 people were supported into work. Over 340 employers we worked with, whether that's around how to diversify their workforce or whether they've got particular skills challenges that they can't recruit for, that we help them develop that. And we did obviously done 4 major career events, which have had over 20,000 visitors across the last 12 months as well. And there's stats in there and the stats at the end around the ward breakdown and the different communities that access that service, which we could spend a whole meeting on, but I'll leave that for you to look at and come back to for questions later. Next slide. So this is not kind of the focus of what we do, but it's become a big part of what we call inform, inspire, include. So how do you let people know what's out there, what opportunities are, what the different skills and jobs they can access and they need are. Moving on from that, how do you inspire them to do it? So how do you show them real examples of people doing those jobs and the kind of careers that they can have? And then how do you make sure that everyone's included in that? So how do you tap into the communities that really need that support? How do you get people that look and sound like the people in those communities doing those jobs, talking to them about what the jobs are and how you access them? So there's, as I said, there was over 100 community events last year, but there was a big focus on from mainly from employers and education around how do you bring all that together to have a big kind of showcase event. So we piloted it last year and we're building on it this year. So the apprenticeship recruitment fair, we've been doing that since long before I started in the role, 10 years. And we get between 5,000 and 8,000 has been building, and that's kind of the big showpiece around apprenticeships and all the opportunities in there. But we needed to do something more than that. So I kind of tried to build that with my team over the last year or two. So the big thing that we did was around an event called Send Next Choices, which is for kids with special educational needs. We kept going to different focus groups to say, how can we make it more accessible? How can we make it more inclusive? And the answer was, well, you can't really, when you've got 8,000 people in an arena, some children aren't going to be able to access that and feel comfortable. So we tried an event last year, which was just focused on those kids that have those barriers. And it was fantastic, and we got amazing feedback, and we built on that again this year, and we doubled the number of children that came through that. And I think it's more around that. It's an acceptance that everyone there knows what the barriers are, so there's no one was worried about anything, and people could just be themselves and get the information that they needed. So that was fantastic, and we're really building on that now in terms of our Send offer to schools and young people across the city. And then we do 2 events focused around digital and creative skills, because they're obviously key growth sectors. The digital tech event was yesterday. I know you were there, Councillor Marshall, and a number of others were. I've not seen the latest numbers, but we had 5,500 young people booked to come through to that, including quite a lot of schools. And one of the really nice things I saw was that the UTC basically closed down for the afternoon, and their entire student and staff population came through to the arena to access the opportunities in there. And it was a really good, diverse mix of people and businesses, and some great conversations that we had throughout that. And then we're repeating the Creative Skills Fair in November, which is, again, it's around the amazing creative and cultural offer we've got in the city, but also how people with creative skills are needed in other professions as well. So it's not just creative jobs, it's creative skills for other sectors. So moving on to offer for young people. So like I said, we have quite a substantial careers support program that we've developed further to meet some of the stuff that came out of the Future Talent conversation. And last year we were in about 3/4 of schools offering that advice and support, with over 9,000 students accessing that. And that can be anything from apprenticeships to some of the more specialist stuff we did with Lighthouse, for example, around opportunities for young people with autism. And we've tried to build on that, and we've taken employers in. We've worked with companies around. So, for example, we launched a metaverse version of our careers platform so that kids can access different opportunities in virtual reality space, and breaks down some of that barriers that some children might have around coming to events, or they can design an avatar and be whoever they want to be, and have those conversations in a more comfortable way. And that's been fantastic. We've launched a CEIAG network. It's a careers education, information and advice group. So we bring all the careers professionals together so that they can get some consistent support around what's available, and we can bring businesses into them to talk about the kind of opportunities that are there. And we've done a lot of that in terms of connecting businesses. And then we've supported a huge number of programs, from P-Tech to Leeds Unleashed to Next Gen Super Squads, that I'll come to as we walk through. Next slide, please. And then quickly, just building on that with employers. So like I said, we've supported 340 employers last year. We've started working on all kinds of things around newsletters and information for them to access those kind of careers information that they need. We've plugged them into schools. We've appointed, kind of reshaped the team. So there's a skills lead for each of those core sectors. So businesses have a key person to contact to help them with their skills needs. We've supported through Section 106 and social value outcomes. I think that figure's gone up to 450 people supported into jobs through those kind of planning applications and things like that. And then just to go through some of the key sectors. So digital's been quite a big one over there. Sorry, Becky, can you flick to the next slide? Digital's been quite a big one. Obviously, everyone knows the extent of the digital and tech community in Leeds, and the amount of roles that are coming through, and the skills gaps that are coming through alongside that. So we've done a big piece of work with employers and the schools and colleges around just mapping out what those skills needs are currently and what we think future skills are going to look like, so we can start bringing young people into those roles. And one of the great things we looked at yesterday that Louise led on in my team is about kind of breaking down some of those roles. So there's a lot of tech roles where you look at it, and I wouldn't have a clue what the job actually is, but when you break it down and demystify it, it's actually quite an easy job that young people could access. And then convincing young people that they're already portraying some of those skills. So they're already sat at home creating games in Fortnite and Roblox, but it's kind of connecting them to the fact that they can earn quite a good career and living out of developing those skills and using them in the right way. So we've done a huge amount of kind of information sessions to help demystify that, help link young people into those opportunities, breaking down what some of those, so looking at the gaming industry, breaking down the different elements of that, from illustration to design to storyboarders and all the coding, because everyone thinks it's just coding, but it's actually a huge amount of skills and jobs around that. We launched Leeds Unleashed with XDesign, Burberry, Glean and Sky last year, which was fantastic, where over 2,000 people went into those businesses and kind of looked at what it's like to work there, talk to recent graduates or recent apprentices around the roles and opportunities to understand them a bit better. We've been modifying our adult skills program. So I'm looking at using adult skills to look at AI skills and boot camps around digital and supporting them into a range of different levels. And then there's P-Tech and there's Growing Talent Digital and Girl Tech that we run with the Ahead partnership, and lots of other initiatives across digital that we've kind of piloted or built on over the last 12 months that are having a big impact, I think, moving forward. Next slide, please, Becky. And then again, we've already always worked well with health and care and the Health and Care Academy in particular around kind of building on those employment skills outcomes. And we've done a lot. So everyone will know about Lincoln Green. I think we use that at every example, but we've built on that with things like Red Kite View and others, where it's trying to get more local people from in those areas where these sites are based interested in those roles and support them into it. And a lot of that's been involved around, helping them with their maths and English and ESOL skills so that they can access those health and care jobs. And we've made quite a big progress with anchors, partners, and with the Health and Care Academy over the last 12 months. And we've had over 500 people from those target wards supported into those NHS jobs, or put on pathways and skills programs to get there, which has been really, really good. Next, you're already ahead of me. This is a kind of a newer one, because this is kind of this merged out of the Future Talent Plan and is building on the success of digital. But it's how do you, with the financial and professional services sector, how do we try and build the same kind of collaboration that exists with the digital sector? So again, we're just starting to map out what their skills needs, and we're working with some of the bigger kind of consultancies and accountancy firms to look at why young people aren't looking at those jobs in the way they used to in the past. And some of that's around entry routes, and some of that's around perception of what those roles are and who they're for. And we're trying to break some of that down. So we've been doing a lot of engagement with financial and professional services employers to help support that and help get young people interested again and break down those barriers. And we did a great piece of work with Startup Sherpas last year, called a Time Machine Report, which is around what the future of financial services looks like for young people. So we had 100 students that were on a paid work experience program that went through a kind of innovation boot camp, but it was focused around financial services and what that means to them and what it needs to look like in the future. And if you haven't already seen that, we'll share the report, because there's some great insights into what young people want from that. And then next slide is around green skills and net zero. So again, we've a huge push over the last 12 months around getting into schools and talking about the kind of the jobs that are coming out in those areas. And I've deliberately tried not to call it a green skills plan, because green skills means a million things to a million people, but it's effectively how do we get businesses and people through to that journey to net zero? How do we develop the talent, future innovators, and how do we get people creating the next generation of solutions and problems to fix those skills? And we've done it again through adult learning and through with businesses, try to map out the skills needs and put in programs like carbon literacy training and all kinds of things to get that kind of where it needs to be, and run a number of pilots with Ministry of Justice and the prison service around different recycling plants that we can get young people involved in. So moving on then, so we always develop the Future Talent Plan as a kind of 3 to 5 year plan, accepting that we would need to keep kind of evolving and reiterating it as we walk through. So obviously employment skills are responsible for implementing that, but it's a partnership effort, and there's lots of partners and businesses in the city that are helping us. So if you look on the website, there's loads of pledges of businesses that are doing things, and the college have signed up to. And it was always about not the previous plans have always just been a PDF that we put on a shelf and then people forget about it. And this was designed to be agile and adaptive and constantly evolving, so that partners take ownership of it. So it's not just a council plan, it's a city plan that everybody works together to own. And we're doing a lot of work, I'll pick up in a second, around kind of the data that's coming out of that and how we can better use that data to make more informed decisions and develop better programs for people in Leeds. And particularly how that kind of people element of the inclusive growth strategy kind of moves forward as we develop that further. So in terms of next steps, next slide, please, Becky. So we had a steering group in place with the kind of key partners in the city and users that formed in January last year, and we need to bring that back together. We've been debating how we do that within the parameters of the inclusive growth strategy and how we can take that to maybe a bit bigger than it was previously. We'll continue to kind of innovate around skills programs. So we're working more with Startup Sherpas around some of the super squads and how we can get more young people involved in that. We've developed a city blueprint for kind of how an integrated employment and skills system works with educators and businesses that other cities are starting to look at now, which is really, really interesting and quite good. We're trying to work with kind of networks across the city, so Black young professionals, Wild, Getaway Girls, to try and make sure again that Include Me part of that Inform, Inspire, Include is really focused on. And we're working on all kinds of funding bids to make sure that we continue to have an impact in the city, and we can continue to bring partners, particularly smaller voluntary groups that are doing great work that we need to kind of help. Now European funding is finished, so we're looking at UK SPF and other things to bring that forward. And then there's some slides at the end on data, which I'm not planning to run through, but it's more there for information. So like I said, we're looking at how we can better use data and how we can particularly, I know it's been asked a few times, how we can better follow who's getting jobs when employers are coming into the city and how many recruited locally against outside, which is it's not an easy task, but we're looking at how we can do it. But I know, for example, that the 3,000 people we supported into work as a service last year were all from Leeds, because they have to have a Leeds postcode for our funding stream. So, but at the moment, that's the only data I can categorically give you on in terms of local people into jobs. But we're working on that. And we still send out all the universal credit and benefit data to all members monthly, so that you've got a picture of kind of where unemployment and universal credit stats are, both citywide and in wards, and that we can break that down. And it's there for self-service if anyone wants to dig in further. And then we do a kind of more full data picture and employment skills service report every 6 months to community committees that delves a bit deeper into what we do as a service, what we're planning to do next, and where the data and trends are. So we're always happy to look at that and see if that's meeting needs. And I'm conscious I've talked a lot, so I'm going to stop there and then invite questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin, for that very comprehensive report, and it's very, very progressive from looking at where you were last year, September, and where we are now. So before I open up to board members, I do know I asked the question of, even though you did say in your data report, that's all you were able to get in terms of the numbers of Leeds residents who are being employed by yourself or coming into the city and getting these jobs. I did ask, what class of the jobs are these people getting? And I remember asking that in the last scrutiny when there was a presentation by yourselves. Do we have any data from that question?
No, that's what Martin was indicating, that in order for us to be able to start to get that type of information, we'll need to put arrangements in place and then over time be able to tell, to give an indication. And it will only ever be an indication, because we can only talk about people that come through some of our events and services. So what we won't be able to do is get a full, complete picture by organisation coming in of their employees, unless, of course, they're in a position where they're prepared to kind of share some of that information, but that would be quite a significant undertaking. So I think, Martin, timelines wise, I think you talked about maybe towards the end of the year having a bit of an indication.
Yeah, so we're looking at kind of December, January to try and get as much of that information as we can. And there are some employers that would be prepared to share some of that data. We're looking at how we can take a sample of it so that we can kind of, because I mean, we've looked at it anyway. So we know, for example, that level 4 skills in Leeds is quite high, but what we don't know is that people coming in with a level 4 qualification, or is it people gaining a level 4 whilst in Leeds? So there's lots of stuff that we're trying to underpin, and we've got a big push on data over the next few months, but hopefully by January, we'll have a bit better picture.
Okay, thank you very much. Obviously, I'm a very huge fan of tech, and especially when it comes to young people and where we are currently. So what specific support are you giving to people who are digitally excluded at this moment in time in our city, in terms of digitally excluded from the labour market, in terms of accessibility? And of course, we have language barriers. I did say something about, what you're doing with people who are attending English as a second language courses. So what specific intervention are you doing to that group of people?
So there's quite a lot of work. So obviously everyone will be familiar with the 100% digital Leeds work. So we've worked to kind of help support them and bring in some extra funding through. There's a UK SPF program called Multiply that we've got funding for, that we've helped fund the 100% digital team through. But also we've built some of our adult learning courses around kind of digital skills, digital literacy, and how to access some of those core skills. So in terms of digital literacy, I think there's a lot going on in the city at the moment, and that's happening in community. So it's making a big impact. In terms of ESOL, we've made a big push. So part of that Multiply strategy is to hugely increase the number of ESOL courses we offer, and we're working with the college again around how they increase theirs, because it's always oversubscribed. And But we've also worked over the last few years with ESOL providers in the city to develop a kind of core consistent curriculum. So if people are coming from one course to another, they're all following the same pathway so that they're not kind of having to start again each time they go to courses. So that's made quite a big impact and helps in terms of that as well.
And just to add, Chair, the other area where we're trying to kind of increase our impact is through working with the Leeds Anchors Network as well. So some of the things that Martin mentioned, particularly around health and care, have been connected and had more impact as a result of the Anchors Network. And we have got a project that was funded through the Health Foundation where we've been doing some research about blockers to getting jobs into those anchor organisations. And often the kind of research is pulling back exactly the issue you're raising around saying there's an assumption made that I have the access to a quiet place or an appropriate laptop or an internet connection to be able to apply for a job in the first place. And so flagging some of these barriers. So we're also looking at how we can collectively as employers across that Anchors network work to sort of remove some of those barriers and be mindful of them and trying to link all of that back together.
Okay, thank you very much. Board members, over to you. Who would like to go first? Councillor Buckley.
I've got 2 or 3 short questions, Chair. I thought the report was very good, actually, and quite impressive. You mentioned that you had 20,000 visitors to the arena, and I just wondered if it was possible to extrapolate from that how many of the young people visiting it that actually got jobs as a result of it. And secondly, on page 14 of the papers, one of the bullet points, we will encourage people who have been economically inactive back into the workplace. I just wondered how you intended to do that. And the last question actually was a young person at the age of 18, let's say, they're unused to going to work for obvious reasons, and they need to be subsumed into the ethos of the company and taught the skills, the social skills, and how to carry on at work. And this to me means that you can't say to them, well, look, here's a laptop, go and work from your bedroom. Obviously not. They have to be in the company, in the workforce properly. And I just wondered whether the City Council is giving a lead on this in terms of reducing the numbers or the proportion of working from home.
Thanks. So I'll ask Martin to answer the first 2 and then I'll comment on the third.
Yeah, so in terms of the visitors to the arenas into work, it's quite difficult. So we've got numbers that I can share in terms of people that we know have come through. So we know that last year's digital, there was around 200 direct jobs that were appointed as part of it. But I suppose one of the emphases of those events is more around giving young people the information about. So some of them won't be in a position to apply for a job yet. They might be a few months into a college course, and it's around opening up those opportunities and inspiring them to think about those as a career when they're making the next choices. So we've got lots of information around kind of what is meant to them in terms of their decision making or what opportunities opened up to them. But so it's not always about just getting them into work. But we've got an evaluation of each of the 4 events. I'm happy to share that so that you can look in more detail. But so we do have the data, but it's not as high as 20,000 because it's primarily about information awareness and raising. And the second question in terms of it, so we do work with employers around kind of breaking down barriers and how we get people back into work. And so a lot of it's around, for example, we've done work around our healthy workplaces, which is around getting people who might have barriers, health related barriers. We run mental health programs and physical health programs. So they might be economically inactive because of those health barriers they face. So it's a longer journey for them, but we're putting those things in place with organizations like Barker and others to give them the support they need. And that was one of the things that when we made a conscious effort to look at funding to deliver services ourselves is around, not there's for want of a better phrase, not going after the people who are easy to get into work. It's around working with the ones that other organizations might not want because they get paid the same, whether it takes them 2 years or 6 months to get them into work. And all of our programs are about the ones with significant barriers who really need that support. So there's a lot of economically inactive people that we've supported through mental health programs, physical health programs, and also the work we've done with young people with special educational needs around, there's some amazing careers for those people with those barriers in particularly in the digital and tech sector and creative industries. And it's breaking down some of those perceptions and barriers and helping those in. And also a lot of it is around people who might have been displaced through COVID and been economically inactive and supporting those back into work. So again, we've got lots of evaluation around, who those people are and what their barriers are that I'd be happy to share. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
There is also more potential in the Leeds Anchors network to do more as well. So I think as we go forwards into the coming years, if we're looking at where we can build on some of this. So just on your final question, Councillor, it's not in our remit in city development to comment on the council's policy around working from home and how those decisions are made. However, what I would say is that wherever we have young people that come into our service area, we work or anyone new coming to our service area, we work very closely with them to make sure that they get a great experience and embedded in. We've been very successful at it. We pioneered the Kickstart scheme in the council through employment and skills and culture and economy. And I'm really proud to say there's a number of young people who came through that scheme who have gone on in the council to be very successful already. One was delighted to let me know just last week that she'd secured a position in our culture team, having been in Martin's team for a period of time and completing an apprenticeship. So we're really proud of our kind of record of kind of leading the way in the council and showing how that can be done.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, and thank you for a very informative report and slides. Couple of questions, really, 3 questions. But can I first of all thank you for the clear effort you're making in prioritising young people with SEND in their life. We are a city that believes every child matters, every young person matters. So it's really good to see that we're doing as much as, and I'm sure there's more that can be done, but that we are doing everything to support our SEND young people. Secondly, at the other end of the spectrum, last year I think I raised about the my concerns that the future talent plan very simply appears to be a plan for young people. There is some evidence of some adult literacy classes being offered, etc. I wondered whether in future iterations this should be called something like everybody's talent plan, because we know that there has been a lot of over 50s leave the workforce since COVID and the pandemic, and we know we're going to need some of those older citizens to come back into the workforce as most of us get into our retirement, and there are less young people to provide all of the services that we old buggers want in our old age. And also, could I ask about the boot camp? Just out of interest, really, what is the boot camp? And my final question, oh, sorry, Sharon. My second question is, there's a lot around tech and a lot around finance and a lot around professional services. There is a small section that talks about an Innovate UK bid around the College of Building and a construction and retrofit forum. Not everybody is academic, as we all know. Not everybody is able to work with their literacy and numeracy, but many skilled or talented young people and older people are able to work with their hands. What are we doing to support those young people?
Thank you, Councillor Lay. I'll take more questions, then you can answer all the questions at the same time, if that's okay. So Councillor Hamilton, I take it he read your mind and your question, so you don't need to ask, is that right?
I don't need to ask that question, Chair, but I've got another question with regards to the fare that you have, and you get over 8,106 employers. Does that include other employers such as British Airways and, other larger rather than just Leeds? Because they do apprenticeships where those who are doing their A levels rather than going on to university, they can be informed about apprenticeship to go into those sectors to avoid them going to university and getting them into debt. So apart from it being Leeds and 106, do we have others from outside coming to attract those or doing the A levels?
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Hussain, please.
Chair, thank you very much. Thank you for a very brief report. A couple of points, Chair. Yes, you are saying in the schools you're working at, but is that across the city? If we can get a report in the future, especially the children who are not achieving a good result in the schools, and how close you are working with the schools, and from the school stage, you putting the young people onto the apprenticeships or any other jobs directly with the schools. And also, are you working with any local community group who are engaging young children to a youth sessions, right? Because in my ward, it is called a junior sport. They're engaging a lot of youth off the street, but they're not with the Leeds City Councils like volunteers, right? And they get a lot of sports from the ward councillors to run the sessions, and they are different age there, Chair, 16 plus, 18 plus, and obviously, to me, I'm not going to say it's every single child, but there are quite few under achievement with the educations. So I think it is good to work, and not just only in my ward. I think it's anywhere else across the city. It's good to engage in it and to point into the right directions for the future of the children.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Yes, Councillor Alderson. Sorry, Councillor Foster. Councillor Foster, my apologies.
Yeah, I'll keep it as simple as I can. Presentation, really enjoyed it actually, all apart from the inclusive growth element, which I'm not going to go into. I think people know how I feel about that. What I wanted to ask relates to attitudes towards university education now. And are you seeing a change in attitude from employees? Do they appear to be moving away from graduate level recruitment and favouring apprenticeships now? And also on the flip side, do you see students or younger people now looking to prefer going into apprenticeships rather than going to university?
Yeah, sorry, just keep writing. The questions are coming. Just two more and then we will be done. Councillor Flynn, thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. Thank you. Just a couple of things really around the risks to the project, and thanks very much indeed, Martin and Eve, for the presentation. You've shown the capacity of employers in the city and sort of elsewhere, I would assume, as being a less significant risk, given the current economic climate and very, not to mention the political climate at the moment as well. It strikes me that it's a more significant risk than perhaps you've sort of expressed in that particular sort of section of the report. whatever that might be, may not necessarily be employed, maybe further training or whatever, particularly with people with special educational needs. And finally, IT. I think there's an assumption by our esteemed IT colleagues who are very expert in it that people know a lot more about IT than they actually do. I'm one of the ones who suffers from that here in the council. And I just wondered if we could have a little bit more about that, not necessarily today, but as the project develops. Thanks, Abigail.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flynn. And the last question is just reference to, in your report, you've made references to the employment and skills demand from the transition to net zero. So what I would like to ask in that on that item is, are we anticipating any change in those demands following the government announcements on net zero this week? And then we'll call this agenda, bring that to a wrap. Thanks. Over to you.
Great, right. We'll do our best to answer everyone's questions. So starting with Councillor Lay. So the future talent doesn't just apply to young people. The title. What we tried to convey and what came across in the consultation is that the economy is changing so quickly that actually the existing workforce needs to be kept up to date on all of its skills as well. And employers' demands are changing. And that's why we developed this agile approach, saying we've got to be really clear and talk to skills providers about what's necessary. Now, something we haven't touched on today, but happily we'll talk more about another time, is that the universities are very much looking at changing some of their offer so that they are not just known for delivering undergraduate degrees and masters, but also able to supply courses to employers over time to keep them up to speed. I think what I would say, however, is a lot of the funding that comes for delivering skills support is targeted at young people. And so therefore, a lot of our interventions end up being focused in that route. So that's why you'll see a lot of activity in that way. That's a result of the constraints around the funding. You asked about a boot camp. So essentially boot camp is a word for a kind of skills provision which would take place in, say, a 12-week window. So 12 weeks, they have got a skill set that an employer will take in at an entry level. So a good example of an organisation that does that is North Coders, who are very well established in Leeds and were at the Digital Careers event yesterday and proved very popular for a lot of people that I spoke to who already got a job who want to do that switch. So those, older people, not necessarily old, but older, in their 30s, perhaps thinking I'd quite like to do something else. So that's what we mean by boot camp. I'll let Martin just comment on the point about work with the College of Building and people who have more practical skills. Martin, if you can take that one.
Yeah, so I think quite a lot of the programs we run are actually not what you would call traditional academic stuff. So there's a lot of kind of hands-on apprenticeships, particularly with the College of Building, but also with Leeds City College and some of the other providers as well. So it's not, I hope we haven't given the impression it's just that those kinds of roles. It's very much retrofitting and traditional kind of apprenticeships around plumbing and electricians and things as well. So that is quite a big focus. Just on the SEND thing, we have really tried hard to make a big push around that this year, and we've made a big effort around supported internships, and we've got a Leeds Inclusive Employers Network, which the next meeting's on the 17th of October. If anyone's interested in dialing in for that one, I'll send you the link.
Great. Then Councillor Hamilton's question, yes, we do have national employers that come to the apprenticeship festival at the arena and the other events. So, for example, BAE Systems were at the event yesterday, but large employers like PricewaterhouseCoopers attend the apprenticeship festival. So absolutely national employers who have a base in Leeds that have those opportunities for apprenticeships for our young people here do participate in that. Councillor Hussain asked about what we do with young people. So bear in mind that we work very closely with children's services, but some of these responsibilities sit with them rather than us. So Martin, maybe you can just comment on how we work with children's on that area.
Yeah, so we very much do work with local community groups and third sector organisations on the ground, and that's part of how we build it up, because they've already got access and kind of, I hate the phrase hard to reach. There's nobody's hard to reach, and just not trying hard enough. If you go to the right community groups, they will already be talking to the young people and older people that we need to work with. So yeah, that's part of how we build our community approach, and is working with existing groups in the areas.
And I have to say, Martin's team are outstanding at this. Having been to the Digital Careers Festival yesterday, it was very evident how diverse the audience was just by being in the room for half an hour. And you do not get that at digital events in the city elsewhere. We have some exemplary officers working in his team. Councillor Foster, you asked the question about attitudes to university education and apprenticeships. I don't think we've got hard data about this, but Martin can certainly give you a view about what he's seeing.
Yeah, I think it's very much a kind of balanced approach, because also the universities have started offering degree apprenticeships and different technical qualifications as well. So I think there's still quite a big market within the same employers for people at all different entry level routes all the way through to graduates. So there's no evidence that people are looking for graduates less. I think that they're opening up what used to be traditional graduate schemes to people with level 5 and level 6 apprenticeships as well. So it's a more diverse offer.
Councillor Flynn, you asked a couple of questions, one perhaps for more of a delve into another time, which was just I suppose the relationship between employers and the labour market in a way. So it is a bit of a kind of it's two parts of the same coin. So employers choose Leeds because they have confidence in the labour market. And when we're doing inward investment kind of discussions, we very much talk about the future talent plan, the fact we have 6 universities, the work we do with Leeds City College. It's a massive strength for us in Leeds that we have not just young people that grow up here and stay here, but also people that come to university here and then stay here to become part of our workforce. So it's really important that skills side is strong to make sure employers are choosing Leeds to found their business and to stay here as they grow and not go elsewhere because they can't get the talent that they need. I think the reason why you do see a focus on those particular sectors of digital, finance and professional services and green is because that's where the growth is in the economy and the change. So we really need to make sure that we're making sure that if jobs are disappearing elsewhere in the economy because of the change, that people can reskill and move into those spaces. That's a kind of a high level, slightly simplistic answer to your question, which I think probably deserves more discussion another time. The point about IT, absolutely. I think, again, the work we do on digital skills, it's not just about saying to people there are jobs in digital businesses and digital specific jobs. We're very mindful that digital now underpins the economy. So anyone in any sector has to have a basic level of digital skills. You need to be able to, in retail, be able to use the iPad that's given to you as somebody in that store to be able to access and order things for a customer in front of you. You need to be able to understand data around supply chains, etc., that's presented to you. So when we're thinking about digital skills, we're not just thinking about digital jobs. We're thinking about making sure that people that are building their skills in other areas also have basic digital skills, and happily come back to kind of maybe explore some of that a bit more. And then, Chair, you asked about green, the green economy and the recent policy decisions, and would that have an impact? I think one of the things that we would really like to do, and are talking to the other anchors in the city about, is giving certainty to our skills providers about the demand we're going to create in projects that will deliver net zero. So to be able to add up all the things that the 14 organisations are doing in terms of, whether that's retrofit, heat pump, new buildings with new standards, so that then the College of Building and others can with real confidence say to parents, there's going to be a job for your, son or daughter, or if someone's reskilling, there's a job for you if you invest in reskilling, because you can show the demand pipeline. So I suppose my comment or observation would be the more you can show the demand pipeline, the easier it is for skills providers to commit. So it's all related. And Martin may want to add on that point about net zero as well before we wrap up.
No, I was just going to say, other than the things that are in train with us are where funding's already available, so will continue to happen, and we'll review that as we go through. But a lot of the demand and funding is coming from the private sector rather than public sector at the moment, so I don't expect that to fall away.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've got through all the questions.
Okay, thank you very much to Eve and to Martin. Members, the Future Talent Programme is about 3 to 5 years time frame. So would we ask for an annual update? Just nod if you're happy with that. And if there are any specifics from the report that you would like us to dive more into, because of timing, I will not ask for them now. If you could just pop that through an email to myself and Becky, and then we would relate that back to the team. So yes, on behalf of the Scrutiny Board, thank you very much for this very progressive report, and keep going and keep up the good work. We appreciate it. Thank you, and thanks for coming. And thank you all to all our guests who have just arrived. Please, we would need a 2 minutes break just to have a glass of water, if that's okay. Thank you very much. Okay, welcome back everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. I have to say thank you very much, Councillor Hayden, for all your patience. You sat there nice and quiet all through, so thank you very much. Right, so we're now on agenda item number 8, which is Leeds Safe Roads Vision Zero 2040 annual report. Just a quick introduction. This Scrutiny Board has a long-standing interest in the numbers of those killed and seriously injured on Leeds Road. As a minimum, we receive updates twice a year on KSI figures as part of our performance monitoring. However, following 2021 and 2022 Scrutiny Board inquiry into the prevention of deaths and serious injuries on Leeds roads, members also committed to receive an annual update on progress towards Vision Zero. For any member of the public who may be watching the webcast, the Vision Zero strategy sets out the ambition that by 2040, no one is killed or seriously injured on the roads in Leeds. The report also includes specific updates on the recommendations made by the Scrutiny Board in April of 2022, and that's in your pack on page 35. Before we begin, I want to remind members about the importance of language when dealing with this topic. The scrutiny inquiry highlighted the importance of avoiding the term accident, and that's to myself too. We tend to use that word very often, but we are choosing not to use the term accident to describe road traffic collisions so that we are always clear about the course of collisions and their human cost. So could I ask members to be very mindful during this debate about using the word accident? We would use the word collision instead, if that's okay, members. Can I get a smile and a nod, please? Thank you very much. Excellent. I will now invite members to introduce themselves. Councillor Hayden, starting with yourself. And if you can introduce everyone that we have here. I can see we've got the police as well, looking very smart in their uniforms. So thank you for coming to the Civic Hall today, and over to you for introductions, and then you can start. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll get it right this time and not do my introduction too early. My name's Councillor Helen Hayden. I am the Executive Member for Sustainable Development and Infrastructure, and I'll allow people to introduce themselves, but just to say I'm incredibly proud of this team and the partnership working as well. So should we start with Gary?
Good morning, everyone. Gary Bartlett, Chief Officer for Highways and Transportation at Leeds City Council. I also chair the West Yorkshire Vision Zero Executive Board.
Good morning, Neil Hudson. I'm the Policy Manager for Vision Zero at the Combined Authority.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Jeffrey. I'm the Police Partnership Lead for the Safe Roads Agenda. I also represent West Yorkshire Police on the West Yorkshire Safety Camera Partnership.
Yeah, morning, Chair. Superintendent Sarah Thumpage. I Superintendent for Operational Support in West Yorkshire Police with responsibility for roads policing, operational lead.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. James Farrer. As of the 9th of October, I'll be Chief Inspector Operations with responsibility for roads policing within West Yorkshire Police.
Good morning, Rosie Revel, Team Leader Road Safety.
Morning, everyone. Gillian MacLeod. I'm Transport Development Services Manager at Leeds City Council, and I chair our Leeds Safe Roads Partnership.
Good morning, everyone. Nicholas Hunt. I'm the Traffic Engineering Manager for Leeds City Council, and I'm also the Vice Chair of the West Yorkshire Camera Safety Partnership.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ian Greenwood. I'm a volunteer and I am a road safety campaigner. I also sit on the West Yorkshire Vision Zero board. I'm very pleased that you invited me today. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, and great to see you, Ian. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you to the West Yorkshire police team as well, who are all here in great numbers. Just to also let you know, board members, we've got Neil Hudson with us today representing Alison Lowe, and just to let you also know that Neil is new to the job, so when asking questions, don't ask questions from 1900, just be kind to him, okay? Right, so thank you very much, Councillor Hayden. Over to you.
Thank you. It's my absolute pleasure, and I'm really proud to present this first annual report, I suppose, of the Vision Zero partnership and the work that's been going on in Leeds. So it was a year ago that we launched Vision Zero officially, and there's an awful lot of work that it continues to go on and has started since then. And I think it's in my view, it's a comprehensive report, and I love the fact that it goes from the smallest people who live in Leeds with car seat safety fitting and making sure that our most vulnerable babies and young children are protected when they're travelling in cars, right through to children at primary school with their scootability and bikeability and their training on road safety, and through input the older year groups with their safety training on bikes, etc., to the 16 to 24 age range, who are our most vulnerable in terms of using the roads, in terms of driver and collisions, and right through to people who are more elderly and maybe need more advice and guidance when it comes to driving and using the road safely. So I hope that it gave, it is just a snapshot really, although it's a comprehensive report, of the huge amount of work from influencing behaviour to the traffic engineering side. And I'm really proud that over the last year, really down to Nick, really, and it was in partnership, but I have to say that Nick was the driving force, and he took on an awful lot of the work himself in terms of getting the rules changed and the guidance changed for average speed cameras, of which we've been able to install on a couple of key corridors in Leeds, where there have been some awful collisions in the past. The numbers of so I'd like to thank him for that, and that will be rolled out across the city where it is suitable. The numbers of collisions are high, and higher than anybody would want them. That is reflective of the national picture. But we are determined and committed to working really hard in Leeds to make sure that those numbers of collisions come down. Every collision, every casualty is a person who has friends and family who love them and who are adversely affected by that incident. And no matter how minor or major, that doesn't matter. It is can be a life-changing. They all are life-changing events in terms of those incidents. So yes, that's my introduction. And I don't know whether Gary, you want to say anything?
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. So just in responding, trying not to cover the same points that you did, Chair, and what Councillor Hayden has just said. I think it's worth just reiterating why we're here. We have an ambition to not have anybody killed and seriously injured on our roads by 2040. And the reason that has been set is because on average, each month last year, 46 people were killed and seriously injured on Leeds' roads. 46 each month on average. That is far too many. It's unacceptable. And despite the best efforts of work that's been done by numerous authorities and agents over time, the reason we're here is because that number was not coming down. And so we have to change the way we look at this area of work and do things slightly different, maybe very differently, to make sure we can have an impact here. The figure for West Yorkshire is 117 each month on average last year. So if you think of the personal tragedies that sit behind that, that's why we're here today. I'm not going to go through the report in any detail, just because it is a lengthy, comprehensive report, as Councillor Hayden says, but I hope it shows and reflects the work that we've done collectively. And this is a small group of people that are involved because it's such a massive topic around the structures and the governance that have to be put in place to enable us to spread the word here and to engage partners and agencies across the city, but also across West Yorkshire. So there's quite a lot of terminology in here around the different meetings and subgroups that have been set up. But we thought that was really important because it's such a vast area of work, to enable those groups to get on and do their work and report back ultimately to the Vision Zero board, which is, I think, as you alluded to, is chaired by Deputy Mayor Alison Lowe. And is attended by very senior politicians, leaders even, and clearly Councillor Hayden is on it as well, and senior officers too, which give the strategic direction to us all. The report also sets out some of the work that's been done, and again, I'm not going to go through it all. It's all there for people to have a look at. I might draw out the various operations in terms of SNAP and Spark that have been undertaken in conjunction with the police, which are really important, and the extension of Fatal 4 to Fatal 5 in terms of how we address road safety issues. And I can explain that if further, if need be. So for me, sort of in summary, this is about spreading the word, getting people to engage in Vision Zero across the city in West Yorkshire, and to respond to it and to develop their own action plans to it. It's very much about the council leading by example too. And then we've got quite a bit of work still to do in that area across the whole council. We need to be talking more to the Health and Wellbeing Board, for example. Colleagues have been to the community committees, and I think those presentations have gone down well, but there's a lot more that can be done. And we need to think, and this is a live conversation, around drug and drink testing within the council for people who drive around the city. This is what our contractors and our consultants do on a regular basis, and we need to follow their example and extend those modus operandi to others as well. So, as Councillor Hayden, final comment, I think hopefully the report gives you a flavour that a lot has been done over the last 12 months, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. And around this table, you have very enthusiastic, passionate people about this agenda who want to see a delivery, but there's a long way to go to meet the ambition that's been set. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayden, and thank you very much, Gary. Like I mentioned earlier, this is an agenda that's very close to our hearts on this board. So we are now open to questions, comments, discussions from board members. But I would like to start with Neil. I do know I said let's be kind to him, but I will throw the first question at you, Neil, in terms of the public consultation that WICA has had on this strategy. So I just want to ask if you've got an update for us in terms of feedback from the public consultation you've had on this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So in relation to the consultation, just to be clear with regard to the strategy, the consultation that has been put forward by the combined authority is for the West Yorkshire strategy rather than just the Leeds strategy. So we'll talk on that level. So we have put a public consultation survey out, which closed on the 4th of September. There were 1,165 responses to that public consultation. We are currently working through the analysis of the responses that have come through. And the next stage will be that we've got a further event, which is planned for the 30th of October, where we can bring together partners to work through the consultation in terms of what the public have said, working on the 5 pillars of Vision Zero.
Okay, thank you very much. Board members, just to let you know, that's in reference to the timeframes for development from WICA. So that's in your pack, page 25, so paragraphs 8 and 9 to what Neil has just said. Okay, questions from members? Isaac, did you want to go?
Thank you. Thank you. Really useful report. And also want to say thanks to Rosie Revel and her teammate, Chris Kirby, who came to our community committee and did a really good talk on this. We had a really rich conversation with local residents about road safety. Did I hear you right? Is 46 killed or seriously injured or on the roads every month in Leeds? It's a really, really startling statistic. I was surprised by that. I think as well, what's not captured in that is all of the near misses and the bumps. And myself and my partner and lots of people I know don't report, those kind of things. They happen every day, and those imply that a serious incident could have happened, and B, make people less likely to walk or cycle or travel in that kind of way. It has a sort of chilling effect. I don't think there's probably a good way for us to capture those statistics, but I think that should be the kind of background information in all of this conversation as well. Is all of us those 46 are just the very, very worst incidents. I think my perception is that the biggest part of this is speeding, or that's a huge part of this is speeding, and I've had a lot of conversations recently about roads that are currently 30 miles per hour, which we as councillors believe should be 20 miles per hour, because of the much smaller likelihood that will, if someone's hit a 20, that it will result in a serious injury or death. But something that comes up is people will say, well, for example, in my ward, you've got Grove Lane and Shore Lane, both long roads that come off a main road, and roads that I think there's an idea that people want to speed down those roads because they are long and straight and they can pick up some speed there. If we move those roads from a 30 to a 20, is there evidence that would then actually, that more people would actually meet that speed limit? Because we're being told that people won't necessarily keep to that new speed limit, and I'd like to know what is the effectiveness of simply reducing, even perhaps without enforcement, simply reducing the speed limit to 20. It seems to me that looking at what's been done in Wales recently, there's already been some quite good reporting around just by default changing road speed limits to 20 has led to incidents avoided and better behaviour from drivers. So I would like to know what your views are on the effectiveness of reducing a road speed from 30 to 20, even if perhaps it's a road where drivers will instinctively want to go faster.
Thank you. Yeah, so we record on the collision one, we record serious and fatals, but we also record slights where there has been a slight injury. And they are a very significant proportion of the collisions that are occurring on our roads. In terms of the bumps where they're not reported, there is no formal mechanism for recording those. But part of this process is about, can we collate that information somewhere? And it won't be just from residents, if you like. There are many other organisations that collate data. And would that be useful for us in terms of improving road safety? So there's a whole piece of work and thinking going on around, yes, we've got the statistics here, but there might be other information out there. And can we collate that in different ways? Perhaps from hospital information, perhaps from, there's one I heard the other day was about street lighting, for example, damage to street lighting poles. Well, if that's happening on a regular basis, but no one's getting hurt, well, we've got that information as the highway authority. That might give us an indication of something might happen again in the near future. And can we act on that? And colleagues in traffic will pick those things up. So there's a whole piece of work around what else is out there and can we bring it together? So we haven't got the answers yet, but that's part of the analysis and assessment of what we're doing. And it will help to build this picture of what's going on our roads is what we're looking for. In terms of speeding, I might defer to the police in a minute, but speeding is one of the fatal 5 that I refer to. Our analysis of all the collisions that are occurring is that careless driving is the predominant factor. Speeding is clearly in there, but it's not the predominant one. Moving speed limits from whatever it is by just putting up new lower speed limit signs historically, even from a Department for Transport point of view and engineering perspective, has always, the answer has been just putting up signs on its own does not change driver behaviour. And there are examples where that has been done, and not necessarily in this city, but in other places I've worked, and it doesn't work. So that's why authorities do develop the criteria around where they should put these in and lower speed limits, and when they would recommend not to, because that's based on what has happened elsewhere. Drivers will drive according to the conditions, and it's very difficult to persuade them otherwise. Having said that, however, in the context of Vision Zero, are we entering a new world where we need to try and push at the boundaries of this? And I think that is the challenge that, if you like, as traditional engineers who've been in the game a few years need to challenge ourselves on, and those type of things may emerge. The current policy, though, is that we have for 20s is we do measure the speeds of the vehicles, and if they're below a certain threshold, then we will recommend a 20. If it's going slightly above, we will consider putting a 20 in, but it will require traffic calming, and that's an agreement we have with the police. And perhaps at that point, I might defer to Paul if you want to say anything on this subject.
With regard to speed limits, it's almost a no-brainer that the slower the speed at the point of impact, the lower the chances of significant injury. So it's a really healthy debate we're having around the use of urban speed limits to mitigate against that threat. From a policing point of view, we have a good relationship and very practical data-led understanding about the use of 20-mile-an-hour zones in Leeds and indeed across West Yorkshire. So acknowledging that signs on their own don't automatically lead to a reduction in mean speed, we work together and examine the actual dynamics on the road in question, what the prevailing tendency for drivers to travel at currently is, what the desired level of speed should be, and then aspire to a position where the limit on that road looks and feels like the speed limit that we want to go to. And what I'm saying here is, if taking, for example, the road that you describe, a long straight road, well, perhaps that doesn't feel like a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. Therefore, it may be seen as unreasonable and unjustified for a lower speed limit to be imposed. However, if following traffic flow surveys, we can establish that through signage alone and or a combination of signage with traffic calming, we can make that road feel and look like, from a driver perspective, a 20-mile-an-hour limit. That may well be an option that's pursued. And that's the principle that we've followed in many of the urban 20-mile-an-hour zones across West Yorkshire. So that's retaining a data-led justification for the reduction in the speed limit, but also making the demands on introducing those 20-mile-an-hour speed limits realistic in terms of delivery from a local authority and police enforcement perspective.
Is that a supplementary question? Yeah.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Just a supplementary question, because I think what's really interesting here is, first of all, for some of these roads, even if they don't meet our criteria, there's often a very strong community perception that that road is unsafe, and that people are going too fast on it. Certainly the case certainly the case for the two roads I mentioned, and many others in the ward. What I wondered is, I think we're working towards local transport plans now for all of our wards. If the elephant in the room here is money, and we need money to change the shape of that road so that there's traffic calming and so on, so that the feel of that road matches our ambition that it should be a 20 because of the perception of safety and because it's an important pedestrian crossing area and so on and so forth. Would it make sense to then to be able to say in a local transport plan, our ambition for that road is that it moves from a 30 to 20, but and the way we realise that ambition is, funding bids, to Act Travel England and so on and so forth. So at least we can document that there's real community desire for that road to be a lower speed limit, and we can start to make the case for the money that will enable us to do that by making it like realistic to have that lower speed limit, and being able to document it and putting it into that plan, I think would go some way to reassure people that we're working towards that outcome. We are constrained by money right now, but at a future date we may not be if we're successful in making a bid and so on. Does that make sense as an approach?
Yep. Chaz, do you want me to come in? Yes, that is the purpose of the local transport plans, is to go out to the communities and to ask them what their issues are, and how they're feeling about the network. For us to record that, or for them to record it on the websites that will be used, the social media that will be used, and then we can see what the issues are and trying to respond to those. As you say, funding will be a key issue. I'd like to flip this conversation, also take the opportunity to flip this conversation, because we all, and the people in the community, also have the ability to influence the speeds and the feel of their local communities. They are in control. I am in control of my right foot when I'm driving on the accelerator pedal, and it's how do we, and this is the challenge we all face. How do we get everybody to accept their own sort of personal responsibility here? Because the highway authority and the enforcing authorities are never going to have the resource to do everything across the whole city or West Yorkshire. And it's trying to have this conversation with our residents and colleagues about how can we change the approach to driving, allow more time, plan your journey, slow down, take more care at junctions. Careless driving, remember, is the predominant factor in collisions occurring. And speeding is there. Not wearing seatbelts, using a mobile phone while it's all fairly obvious, but it's still happening. And you've heard the statistics, and it's a tragedy that it's happening. So I think you're right, Councillor Wilson. That is one approach, but if I could take the opportunity just to constructively challenge back.
Thank you very much, Gary. Whilst we were speaking and on this agenda, I have just received an email regarding a proposed 20 miles per hour speed limit in various wards in the city. That includes mine, Little London and Woodhouse, and of course the city centre, as well as Hunslet and Riverside, Beeston and Holbeck. So I take it from your data, and is this a pilot that is going out? And of course, I will definitely welcome this. And is that from data of incidences in terms of collision reports that you have decided to choose these particular wards? The email has literally come 11:56 whilst you were speaking.
Okay, I might defer to Nick on the traffic engineering side, but if I just make the strategic comment that for many years, the council has had an approach where generally, and I say generally because we just had a conversation about a couple of other examples where it's not the case, most residential roads we will seek to try to move to 20 miles an hour. And if you look at the plan of the area that is now covered, it is very extensive across the city. But Nick, I don't know if you've got any further comments around those specific ones. I know we are promoting some 20s, aren't we, across the city now?
Thank you, Chair. In 2018, Leeds committed to make all our residential streets 20 miles an hour. So we've had a programme since that to introduce a 20 mile an hour programme. We're coming to the end of that. There's one remaining ward, which is a Harewood ward, where we're just finalising the implementation of siding and lining linked in those villages. What we're doing now as part of a final review is we're looking at any roads within those other areas that we've already treated to see if there's others that we've missed. So we've got a map-based system that can identify locations now. So if a new development has come online and they've not got a 20 mile an hour speed limit applied to them. So the email that I think you've received is a capture. It's a tidy up email. So we can actually close some of these wards off and with the confidence then say that the residential streets in there are all got 20 mile an hour speed limits applied.
Okay, thank you very much. Members have shown their hands, so we'll take questions in threes, and I will call in the order that they put their hands up. So Councillor Buckley, and then Councillor Lay, and then it will be Councillor Hamilton. And then after Councillor Hamilton, it will be Councillor Giovanni, and then Councillor Nicole Sharp. So you will be the third, Councillor Miller. And you as well, Councillor Hussain, right? So that's the order. So don't jump in until your time comes, yeah? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to take up this issue of speeding from a slightly different perspective. We have a road in my ward called Shadwell Lane, which is a 40 miles an hour road. And people sometimes say, oh, it's got to be 30. because people come down here at 60 and 70. And every time the police do a survey, they work out that the average speed is 38, 39 miles an hour, which it is. And when you say to people, have you not considered that you could make the speed limit any limit you like, you make it 20? And those individuals, because of the way they are, will still do 60 and 70. And all the other people who were quite within the law at 38, 39, they would be put out, to put it mildly, and unnecessarily delayed because it was reduced to 30. There's no danger at 38, but there is danger at 70. And I just wondered, it's a question which really is unanswerable, but it seems to me that these days the standard of driving is low. I've never known the standard of driving be so low as it is now. And I'd like the police to comment on that at some point, please. And just one final thing about the speeds. The average speed cameras, I took quite a while ago, I took an advanced driving course. And one of the points that the police made at the time was it's essential that you allow yourself to, if necessary, quickly go over the limit to evade a problem. So it's not just all about the brake, it's sometimes a quick blip on the accelerator to get away from the problem. Now, if that still applies, which I assume it does that reflect in the average speed cameras? So if the speed limit is 60 and you do 65 for 10 seconds, are you going to be, is the average still going to reflect the actuality? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Lots of questions would be possible, but I'll try and restrict them. Firstly, Gary, just on your point, I think the problem is that people who speed are a bit like people who smoke or people who do other dangerous, take dangerous lifestyle choices, is that they don't think it's going to happen to them when they get cancer or they had the car accident. Sorry, we haven't used accident in A&E for a very long time. They've been RTCs for a very long time when they have a collision. So I think the problem is when you're trying to change people's behaviours, people they'll always think it's going to happen to somebody else until it happens to them. And we need to somehow use the full force of enforcement or technology or the car manufacturers. So I've recently got a new car. I'm absolutely loving the adaptive cruise control because I just set it and it reads the speed limit and I just drop it down and it speeds up and slows down, etc. accordingly. And I believe, I'm not sure, absolutely certain, but I believe the EU introduced speed limiting on all their new cars as well. So I'd like to see that at a government level being introduced, whereby all new cars, the technology is there to slow cars down against the will of people. Because we have to recognise that 46 people a month, we wouldn't accept a plane going down every year and taking 300, 400, 500 people out of society. So why should we accept 46 a month of people either dying or having their lives changed markedly? How, though, do we balance the need of speed with the need for people to move efficiently around our city? And which is a challenge, of course. There's currently, from various groups nationally, there's this anti-car anti-car narrative coming in, and has been coming in for a while, driven by some negative players, to be honest, who are trying to divide us rather than unite us as a nation. We should be united in this country. We're trying to reduce the number of road traffic deaths and serious incidences on our roads, because, like I say, we wouldn't accept it if airplanes went down at the rate that people lost their lives on the roads in this country. On a technical data basis, of those 46, do we know how many are pedestrians, how many are in the car? Because obviously the ones we hear are often multiple fatalities in a car. And I think of some of the very sad stories around young men in our part of the world over the last 5 years. So speed is important, of course. Are we killing our drivers or are we killing our pedestrians? Or is it a bit of both?
Thank you, Councillor Lay. And I agree with all of your questions, really, because from your KSI figures for 2022, the numbers are very, very concerning. And for me, the courses as well is even more concerning. So I would really love to hear the response from yourselves regarding that. So one more question and then one more question and then we will come back to the next round of questions so that it's not too much for.
All I was going to say, Chair, was, and this is just Leeds. This is being replicated across the nation.
Yeah. I can see how much this means to you. You were banging the table, so take it easy. All right, Councillor Hamilton.
Don't bang the table. Yeah. Just to say, Gary, I was really shocked at the figures that you said per month. You know, obviously, we're all around here, didn't realise. And obviously, we're all in favour of the zero vision for 2040. You know, I'm really, really shocked. But my question, apart from that, saying that, is regard to the cameras that the West Yorkshire Police, safety cameras, it's got a Tingley roundabout, Ford Green, and the A612. Mine is regarding the Ford Green, the cameras, because a lot of people take, when you're coming from the SO petrol station and round the road, coming straight up onto round the road by the Ford Green, they take a right turn. Is the cameras capturing that? Because there's a Pelican crossing there, and many a times a lot of us have had to jump back because people are taking a right turn and there's that camera there. So what is happening with that? Are those cars being snapped and they're being sent information, a fine, whatever, because it's really dangerous there. They're doing that right turn. Plus also, I want to know if the camera is capturing when they're coming down Errol's Lane and they're not supposed to take, no, I'm saying it's a left turn, sorry, on by the traffic lights where we are. But then when they're coming down Errol's Lane, they're taking the right turn at the Ford Green. They're hauling up traffic, which is, I think it's illegal because there's lights there. And you know, everybody's having to pip in and carrying on. So is the camera picking those up? Because it's really dangerous because there's the filter coming through. So I want to know, because I live there, you see, if the camera is picking them up and they're being fine. And the one that I'm really concerned about is coming from Rounder Road straight up and that left turn, I was saying right turn. So what's happening there? Because we are crossing the road. You know, a lot of people are really frightened and we're trying to avoid it, but it's a Pelican crossing. So that's mine. My question, what's happening if the cameras are there? Who's picking it up and what's happening to those drivers?
Okay, I may call some colleagues in around the table here, so if colleagues can be prepared. But if I start with Councillor Buckley, I think the comments about the 60s and 70s in Shadwell Lane highlights the challenge that we face very neatly. And I probably don't need to say much more, really. That is the challenge of trying to get into people's heads is why do they think it's acceptable in any way to do that type of speed where it's signed as 40 and there's a feeling from the community it should be even lower than that. And it's how we, if we think back about seatbelt wearing, how people reacted to that when it was made a requirement, and people did, well, I'm not going to do that. But now the majority of people do wear seatbelts, and personally I wouldn't get into a car without wearing my seatbelt, and that's not out of a professional thing, that's just a personal safety approach. The average speed camera comment, that's why they are average speed cameras over quite a length. So if there is a need to temporarily do something, that should even its way out in terms of that length that has the average speed camera on. That is always the argument that's put against average speed cameras. The benefits of having such a system far outweigh those issues. And standard of driving, again, other colleagues might want to come back on this one, but anecdotally, I think we can all see that post-COVID driving standards do seem to be worse. And whether there's any actual proof of that from research, I'm not sure. I'm not aware of any off the top of my head. But I think people got used when they were driving through the restrictions, when traffic volumes were very low, that they were able to perhaps to go a bit faster, weren't queuing anywhere. And now things are starting to pick up again, and people are getting frustrated by other people being on the roads and queues and congestion. It is resulting in what we're seeing. Councillor Lowe, again, I don't think there's too many questions in there. Lots of comments that I would agree with. Particularly Vision Zero is about trying to, in order national government around initiatives as well, and the speed limiters. Yeah, very interesting and challenging area of work. We do record lots of data with the police. We do record lots of data in terms when there are collisions on the highway. So we do have all that data. It's broken down and we can cut it many different ways to have a look at what is there. And we do like a bit of enthusiasm and passion around this topic because it is so important for the reasons already given. I don't know if, Ian, I'm just conscious you're here and some of the general comments here around behaviour change. I think we all know that that's a real challenge. I'd just like to bring you in on that point, if I may. And then perhaps, Nick, if you'd like to come on to Councillor Hamilton's specific point about Ford Green. And I think, Gillian, you wanted to add a comment too.
Thanks, Gary. That's probably one of the easiest questions in terms of behaviour change and driving. I guess what I would say is that one of the reasons I think that the conversations that you guys are having now in the last few years is really, really important, because behaviour change is really very difficult. Most people, most of the time, want to get to where they're going safely. That's the standard of everybody, I guess, with exceptions. And there's lots of reasons why there are exceptions. So I think the data-driven work that you're doing is really important. So we know, for example, young drivers, 80% of deaths on rural roads are young blokes. So actually having a strategy that targets or starts to look at that data and see what interventions are possible is the right approach. Then what you do about it in terms of Gary's challenge, in terms of behaviour, is really difficult. I did some research up the road with lots of behavioural psychologists, and that's what they spend their life doing. So we have expertise in Leeds, literally half a mile up the road, but I know that the council are utilising. We actually met yesterday with Professor Jansen, who is one of those experts. It's always about specific tasks, specific incidents, specific age groups. And just to connect it with my first point, for me, yes, consult with those individuals. Yes, look at the data that is really clear, but this is really difficult. And that's why I think just the conversation, increasing the conversation, talk about road death. One of your board members today said that they were shocked at the number of deaths. Well, I've been banging on about this with Leeds councillors for the last 8 years. So I'm shocked that people are shocked. And I think for me, it's really important that the conversation gets more widely. In the paper, it talks about businesses, everybody's business, I think the language that Rosie's used in the report. That's where you need to go as a board, I would suggest. So focusing on behaviour change is really, really difficult, well known for being difficult. How do you force people who still smoke to stop smoking? Really difficult. And I would draw a very clear connection between smoking from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s to road safety today. It's very similar in terms of the policy changes that are required. But sorry, it's a long answer, but having awareness, talking about it, getting as business as usual, treating it as a public health challenge, as an epidemic, stopping people being shocked that 5 people a day are killed nationally. 5 people a day. I mean, that's completely shocking. People don't know that. So I think as a board, you have a scrutiny committee, you have a really strong role of just having the conversation, getting it into the staff within the council and all the partners. And what's your fleet doing in terms of all of that? But in terms of the behavioural question, Gary handed across the table, really, really difficult territory.
Thank you very much, Ian. I'd like you to come back again. For those who do not know you and for the public who are watching us, I do know you're a parent campaigner. I wasn't here when you came and made your initial presentation, which I heard was very, very emotional. And I hate to take you back, but obviously because of your lived experience, you became a parent campaigner. And of course, you're on the board for our Vision Zero. So from your campaign over the years and where we are now, have you seen any changes? And what's the one advice you would give to officers who are here today?
Another really difficult question, Abigail. Thank you. I guess in agreeing to come here today, you're reflecting on the work of the last year and the strategy. And what I did was reflected on my own personal experience. So I have a forever 12-year-old daughter called Alice. She was killed by young drivers on a rural road who also managed to kill themselves and his passenger in 2008. So I guess the reflection is quite hard for me when I do this because Alice would be 25 this year. I actually did those numbers. I never do those numbers because it always scares me. But my reflection, I guess, is threefold. I guess I've got a positive comment, I've got a depressing comment, and I've got a challenge, if I may. So the past, when I started talking to your predecessors in the council, I got a lot of patronising response, which lots of people around the table have heard me go on about before. The kind of the head patting, they were far too busy to meet people like you. There's not that many dead people, are there, in Leeds? We're not any worse than anybody else. That was my initial response from people within Leeds Council and across West Yorkshire, if I'm honest. The positive bit, I said there was a positive bit first, is that there's been so much activity from 2018 when I first wrote to Judith Blake, who was giving me those sorts of answers, to today, where you have a strategy in Leeds, groundbreaking, brilliant. You didn't have one before. There's been huge progress, and a lot of my comments are often aimed at the politicians, I'm afraid, rather than the officers who were there working away, busy, doing as they're asked as for boards like this. So that's a positive for me. We've come an awful long way. And if I look back on the first responses I got back then to today, brilliant. Well done, Leeds. You're leading West Yorkshire. And I think that's really, really strong and really positive. The negative people have talked about already. So if you think about the current 21% increase in deaths and serious injuries is appalling. And I know all the activity is aimed at targeting that, and lots of people have mentioned that today. I'd also mention something else. I'm looking at some data from West Yorkshire. We've had a 28% increase of child deaths and serious injuries. I've got the numbers here somewhere, which are quite scary. So I've instantly lost them. We've gone from 143 to 175 deaths and serious injuries. Now that's the sort of message I think we need to get out there. So the today is a little bit negative, because whilst there's a lot of activity, there's we're not making the difference we need to make yet, I would say. And I guess the future, I'd say that focusing on the provisional numbers for 2022 are really very stark. 21% increase depending on what the final numbers look like. Most of those are probably all avoidable, and the knock-on effect on the health service, the ambulance service, the emergency service, the trauma centre that's up the road, what the police do, what the flows do, what the council do. I mean, the list is very long, many billions, tens of billions of pounds every year. But I think it connects with some of the questions that the board members have been asking. It's about the willingness to make the choices. Some of them are quite difficult. We hear a lot in the media about the war on the motorist. What about all the dead people? Never mind the war on the motorist, I would say. So I guess my challenge is, how do we make it everybody's business, which is the language in the paper? How do we make sure that it is a public health challenge? So we all, and that connects, your question, Abigail, was about what would my advice would be. Carry on talking about it. I think, but if you start to penetrate people's consciousness in terms of, yeah, actually, it's quite easy when you're going down a hill on a speed limited road. It's actually quite easy to let the car. I get that. I'm not one of these bang the table type campaigners, but I think it's about people's awareness and making the right choices. And I guess for today, it's about the council making the right choices. So the challenge is, what you're going to do differently. Gary said, because I wrote it down, maybe we need to do things very differently, he said. Well, I'm on that page. The infrastructure is all there, the strategy is there. You've got a lot of folk now working. Neil's new in post. You've got a lot of people within Leeds Council working at this. What is it that's going to be different? My advice would be, talk about it a heck of a lot more. Talk to the local communities who ideas.
Much, Ian, and thank you for sharing your story. I know it's not an easy one. I know what it means to lose a child, and on behalf of the board, we continue to wish you strength and comfort through the years ahead. And you said we should continue talking about it. We have the infrastructure in place and we have the strategy in place. So we need to continue talking about it and challenging it and doing something about it. And I'm pleased with you acknowledging the progress as well. Yes, the numbers are still sad, but we have a will, and I can see that from this strategy. So it's for us to keep going. I hope I don't get in. So,
in regards to the Ford Green. So the list that she's seen is in reference to red light violation cameras. So we've identified through our analytical work done previously that those 3 locations have red light violations that have resulted in jury collisions. So within this year's programme, that's what's proposed and that's what she sees. In regards to the movement violations that's been described, this might be an ideal opportunity to inform the scrutiny panel that Leeds recently applied to apply for the powers to enforce movement violations that were previously only able to be enforced by the police. So we've been successful, recently been successful, so that we can now enforce movement violations and also yellow box markings through cameras. So this is new technology that we've brought in, it's new powers that we've received. We're in the infancy of moving that forward, but in time we'll be consulting everyone accordingly and explaining what these powers permit us to do and not to do.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. I believe it's the order. Can you remember the order? Is it yourself? Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With your indulgence, I've got a couple of questions and a comment to make. Speeds past primary schools and playgrounds, what are their speed limits expected to be around those? There's an issue on a couple of streets in my ward where you come off Broadway, the ring road between Woodside roundabout. There are a number of vehicles that travel over that, and that's another issue. But then they turn off there on quite relatively wide bends onto a couple of residential roads which drop to 20. I've had a survey done by one of Gary's highway engineers, and that showed that 63.8% of traffic going down that residential road, houses one side, playing field across the way, were travelling above the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. So the question is, what is an acceptable number of vehicles travelling above the speed limit? And because of a significant number, enough to skew it, doing actually below the speed limit, it fetches the average down to 21.8. But that ignores the large number also doing over a quarter of vehicles doing in excess of 25. Now, it's a bit difficult for me to remember when I was a kid. Some of you may remember a bit easier, but if you had a playground opposite or a playing field opposite your house, it was great to just go out. It was great to be able to walk to primary school on your own. That's a very difficult thing for a lot of children to do. And I've mentioned before, and Gary and Councillor Hayden are probably sick of hearing me mention about one particular playground where it's 30 going past the playground. And we've got primary schools, we've got a primary school where it's still 30 going past the primary school in Horsforth. So there's some answers around those. The others are on the other questions around the motorbike trial on the A65. You mentioned in the report you've got 5-6 criteria that are measuring it by, but you only actually give stats based on one of those, and that's the speed, where the speed has actually increased of motorbikes using the bus lanes. So what work is going to be done on getting those motorbikes to reduce their speed in the bus lanes so that they're still within the 30 along there? And you mentioned working with the Motorcycle Action Group. How representative is that of the motorbike users across Leeds? And thank you for this, Chair. One comment that's mentioned in the report about the new speed indicator devices that are going to be available to community groups. I took one out with a couple of officers a week or so back. It wasn't a mobile thing, really. It weighed a significant amount, but I've been told the ones they are getting will be more mobile and easy to handle and won't need a van and a ramp to move them around. But it was brilliant. It was brilliant. Cars actually slowed down when they saw us. They saw us there with the SID, 3 people in high vises, clipboard, and you could see them slow down. You could see it on the SID that they're slowing down. When these come out, I encourage you all councillors, talk to your community groups. It's there, get them used, but wait till I've done mine or I'll be annoyed. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sharp.
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to thank the team for the work on this. I sat on this panel last year, and I know there's a great lot of work. I sit on the West Yorkshire Police and Crime panel, so I know that all the work that's going into it and every element that you're covering. Personally, the motor cycle pilot that you're doing, been travelling on motorbikes for a lot of years. I do think there's a lot of, and we've spoke about this before, driver behaviour, and I think a lot of it is other road users' perception and awareness of motorbikes, not just the motorcyclists themselves. But the question I've got, I raised this last year with you, Gary, but it had just sort of been implemented in relation to the highway code. And it was implemented last year, and I think it was the junctions and the pedestrian. I raised it last year. Has that had an impact on any of the stats? Them getting priority, sorry, is the word we're looking.
Councillor Miller.
Thanks, Chair. My question is on community speed watch, and Councillor Gavani's now touched on it. But these speed indication devices, which are provided by the neighbourhood policing team, I have a number of community groups in my ward who find them really valuable as a service to use, and their kind of anecdotal evidence, at least, is that it does a lot to promote speed awareness within the local area. So I just wanted to know your guys' view on the utility of those devices as part of a wider speed awareness project, and are they, good value for money? Do they work, basically? And then just a supplementary question on the trial that's going on that John mentioned about these newer devices, what the difference is between what was previously being used, and are they more effective? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I may call in colleagues on some of these. Councillor Gavani about speed limits outside schools. Yes, it's very much horses for courses because of the different geographies that might be involved. Obviously, in heavily built up residential areas where speeds are at certain levels, we would hope that we could get 20s in, but it does depend on the circumstances. I think listening to the conversation, I would say, and again, it's this constructive challenge back really, in terms of what we often find is people say, oh, the speed limit is 40 or 50 or 30. Then we need to remember that those are maximum speed limits. Doesn't mean you have to drive. There's not minimum. You don't have to drive at 30. You can drive according to how you feel you should be driving. And again, it's this, let's have a conversation with the community about how we can change this perception. But I think the council has a track record of, we've delivered a huge number of 20s across the city in the last 10 years or so. And where working with the police, where all parties feel that it's appropriate, we will do more. So that's our commitment there. The motorbike, I don't know whether Nick might want to come in on some of the detail of the other, the particulars on that one. In terms of the motorbike trial, how do we get the speeds of cyclists lower, and is MAG representative? Again, very good questions. It will be about behaviour change and education and persuasion and comms and all those things about what we've done a trial. You asked us to do a trial. We're conducting this 18-month trial. And yet what we've seen is some of your speeds increasing of your members. What can you do to help us with that? Because that's not a message we want to receive or give out. So even though I think some of the speed limit increases were marginal, it's still going in the wrong direction. And we know the consequences of that. And how representative are MAG? They're a very key contact for us, and maybe if there are others that are representative as well, we will listen. We will listen to anybody who's got a comment on this, basically. If we could engage with 800,000 residents, we will certainly try to do that. I think the point about the SID and it being heavy, I think Rosie and Gillian are fully aware of that, and we're moving to a lightweight version. Again, Rosie, maybe when I finish, perhaps you want to come in on that. And yellow jackets, yeah, they're fantastic, are they? When we go on site with our yellow jackets, you can see the change in behaviour of drivers, and I'm sure the police see that every day. On the highway code question from Councillor Sharp, again, I might look to colleagues here. I haven't picked up personally any sort of adverse returns on an increase in collisions related to the priority given to pedestrians at side roads, and I can see people sort of shaking their heads and whether the police have either. So, but clearly through, it's rather strange, but the statistics we get through the police and through DFT, they have to be confirmed, and we're still waiting for 22s to be confirmed. We have a lot of the data, but it's this ratification of the data we need as much as anything else. And that will allow us to cut that data again, how we see. And we perhaps we ought to ask that question to see if there's any evidence of that. We can do that, but nothing's been brought to our attention, be it from the police, local police, or our partners, or even the general feedback that the likes of traffic get from talking to local ward members or residents. Councillor Miller, I think I've covered the point about the new device being heavy and a bit cumbersome. In terms of the worthiness of SIDs, the speed indicator devices, if you asked a traditional engineer, he might say, well, you might get a bit of benefit, 1 or 2 miles per hour reduction. And that might have been the response, and that's not good value for money. But I think it comes back for me to this new world that we're in with Vision Zero. It's about encouraging communities to own the agenda, to have conversations with their sons, daughters, relatives who perhaps have been caught or seen speeding and say, well, what are you doing? So anything that makes this agenda more aware is got to be good for me. So let's keep talking about it. So Rosie, do you want to come back on the SID? And I don't know if Nick, you wanted to come back on any specifics on the 20s.
Just to pick up on the SID, you're right, the SID was a bit of a challenge. So we're limited by what's available. The SIDs that you've used previously are no longer available. The company no longer produces them. So we've had to go wider looking at what is available, what is going to be practical for use. So we're working with the police, neighbourhood policing teams to come up with something that would be fit for their purposes and for us to use with communities. We are going to trial the new lighter version from the same company that you already saw. I think the advantages of the new SIDs over the old SIDs, you can download the data. You don't need to worry about firewalls. We can actually get data from them that will give us a real picture of what's going on around that. So it's still a work in progress. It's something we're very keen to progress. And we'll keep communities posted as and when we get the new SIDs and they become operational. Absolutely. I hope that answers.
If I can just come in regarding Councillor Gavani's Broadway and the school issues. So some time ago now, there was not a national approach to setting speed limits. So as a driver, you could go into different wards and in different districts and see the same type of road environment being asked to drive at a different speed. So the Department of Transport set some national speed limit guidance so that there was a national approach. Leeds follows that. But we do push the boundary, as Gary said, in regards to challenging the DFT. So one of their requirements is when we assess speeds, we've got to use the mean speed. That doesn't pick up those people, if you described those ones that choose to drive at a higher speed limit. In those, we've got two options then. If we identify that there's a pattern of speeding, we will generally send those results to the neighbourhood policing team. And that breaks it down hour by hour, so the police can do targeted enforcement. And secondly, I know Councillor Hayden touched on it and gave the praise to me, but it was a joint effort between the police and Paul in regards to changing the camera partnership criteria. And one of those new innovative ideas that came from that new strategy is that we've got the ability now to deploy a community speed van to address such concerns. There's a criteria which is a much lower criteria than the previous ones, which were casualty reduction based. This is evidence based through speeding alone. I don't know if Paul wants to come in on that a little bit.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks for raising that, Nick. We were sat here 12 months ago talking about the constraints relating to safety camera enforcement. I'm really proud of the fact that here in West Yorkshire and driven by Leeds, in February this year, we actually put in place a revised deployment strategy for safety cameras. Historically, we'd only placed cameras where people had already died. We recognised that that was just not addressing new and emerging threats. It certainly wasn't addressing community concerns where a collision was likely to happen but hadn't yet occurred. So the new strategy really, it takes the gloves off, if you like, in terms of our ability to use safety cameras to prevent casualties. And we launched in February. We already have over 20 community concern sites nominated by elected members and indeed members of the public in Leeds alone. We have detected in excess of 7,000 speeding offences to date in those locations. Now, those are offences and issues of non-compliance that we formerly would have been totally oblivious to. So I can't tell you that that's prevented X number of collisions or injuries, but I'm absolutely convinced that by being more responsive to community concerns, we now have an additional tactic which is impacting on speed-related risk. Councillor, if I might go back just to one of the questions and talk about the police view around community speed watch and the use of SIDS. It's really simple. It's an excellent means of engaging the public and not only having the visible deterrent while the community speed watch is in place, but it's actually empowering the public to do something constructive beyond the reach of simply the statutory agency responsibilities. We can't enforce or engineer our way out of the issues that we're talking about this morning. What we've got to do is to continue to change the culture in the communities that we serve so that speeding becomes just as unacceptable as drink driving. In the 70s, people thought nothing of going to the pub, having 5 or 6 pints and driving home. In the main, that culture has totally changed in today's environment. We are probably at the very start of that journey around making speed just as unacceptable. But it's a challenge worth addressing and empowering people to do something about it, to start those conversations with young people, young drivers and other road users through such vehicles as Speedwatch is really valuable. And also, if I may just extend this principle to what we've done around the use of dash cams and head cams and helmet cams. Same principle applies here. Operation Snap, introduced back in 2020, was a means to empower the public to actually do something about the appalling driver behaviour that they may have witnessed when they've been going from A to B and secured on their dash cam. Now we're in a different place today because the use of digital technology in vehicles is widespread. So from a relatively slow uptake back in 2020, we now have over 20,000 submissions by members of the public across West Yorkshire of poor driving, including dangerous driving, inappropriate and dangerous speed, failing to comply with red traffic lights, etc. Now, I'm really proud of the fact that we've got that level of engagement. which is resulting in over 72% of those submissions resulting in some form of action. That action may well be a referral of the offending driver to a retraining course. It could be a fixed penalty, or it could indeed, depending on the severity, result in a court appearance. But all these things, Operation SNAP and indeed Community Speed Watch, are part of that engagement programme that we're delivering with the communities that we're here to serve.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That was my next question on your Operation SNAP. And obviously it's great to see the outcome, especially. The only question I have there in terms of snapping. So, and I call them naughty boys. All my children are boys. So I think I've got every permission to speak to that category of boys, because I know what they can be up to. Now, most of the cyclists who are causing a lot of, especially those on e-bikes, okay, using balaclavas, and again, most of them are very young boys. What are we doing, and how can Operation SNAP capture that group? Because obviously they're covered. So even if you take a picture using your Operation SNAP, how does that help you translate any action or any prosecution or whatever it is you would need to do to stop that behavior that they do around the city?
I can certainly provide a response to that question from a policing point of view, but I know colleagues in the local authority will no doubt wish to add to it. The advent of electrically assisted pedal cycles, e-scooters, etc., is a relatively new challenge. There are significant limitations around what Operation SNAP can offer in terms of the solution. And the reason is very simple. For us to progress an issue that's been submitted by the public through Operation SNAP, we need to be able to identify the vehicle, which will then take us to the driver or rider. Clearly, electrically assisted bicycles or indeed scooters, they don't display a vehicle registration mark. Therefore, there's no registered keeper. There is no insurance linked to those vehicles in the main. Therefore, our ability to act simply on the submission of a bit of digital footage is virtually none, unless the identity of the rider is known to the person who's submitting. And that sometimes does happen. Because of the fact that somebody lives in that community, they might well know that Paul Jeffrey is the rider of that e-scooter that tears around causing havoc at a particular time, and they might recognise them simply through clothing. That sometimes forms the basis of a submission, and we will pick that up on its merits and be evidence-led in our approach. So that's really an honest take on the limitations around this type of vehicle.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the question here is, you can't identify them. So what other way are we able to tackle that behavior in these young boys?
So what we're talking about here is obviously the possibility of the commission of moving road traffic offences, and of course the conduct of some of these users of scooters and electrically assisted cycles amounts to antisocial rider behaviour. Across each of the 5 districts, including Leeds, we have an off-road bike capability. We also have roads policing specialists that have tactical options in relation to powered two-wheelers, be them motorcycles or electric vehicles. Now, I'm not going to go into those tactical options now for obvious reasons, but there is an ability where we've got a pattern of behaviour by somebody using one of these vehicles for that to be brought to the attention of neighbourhood policing teams, and for appropriately trained specialists to be deployed in the vicinity with a view to proactively addressing the risk that they present.
Thank you very much. Just one more question. On page 38, there was a recommendation regarding, I believe, regarding drivers, in terms of lobbying the government to reconsider the introduction of a graduated driver license in the UK. Have we got any updates on that? Yes.
I may be overstepping my mark in terms of why I'm here, but I just know the answer to that. So there was a Transport Committee inquiry that people will probably remember that Baroness Vere basically said, not going to do it. No, government's no plans, and that position has not altered. I've personally been lobbying the Transport Committee to do a review of their decision, which is what they said in 2021. They would review that position. They refused to review that position as well. So it hasn't moved forward at all. There's still quite a lot of lobbying. There's still quite a lot of politics in this, but the current government's currently not prepared to do anything about it, nor the Labour Party.
Okay, thank you very much. Board members, is this an issue we're happy to continue to push forward to the government? Is that a yes from all of us? Okay, we will continue. Remember, when you say keep speaking about it, we will continue to be the voice. So thank you very much for that. Any other questions before I ask the exec member to round up on this agenda item for us? Yes, Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of things. I totally agree with Councillor Sharon Hamilton regarding about the Fort Green and Nick response time for the new technology, but it's definitely is overspeeding is as well. And I'm going to say after peak time. Could be after 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, because when you're coming from top end to the Fort Greens, is down the hill. It's no traffic and it's off the peak, and exactly the same from the Eastleigh Road. So that new things are going to be monitoring about the speed as well, yes or not. That's things. Across the city, I think, Chair, is the road marking are making a difference to the accident. Doesn't matter is a minor or senior. And also road marking and the road signage as well, especially the people's out of the towns when they are into the residential areas. And I think that's quite important as well. Yes, drinking driving under 20 miles per speed hours. I think just we are talking about it, which one is good and safety for the public and for the resident of the Leeds. But to me, some percentage of across the city, they're still abusing the system. Overspeeding it could be as like a normal driving it, could be drinking driving, overspeeding it, right? And I think that's needed to be enforced. Yes, we can do it, many areas as a 20 mile per hour. When some of the drivers are not realizing it's no enforcement there, no police there, right? They're still abusing the system. And I think we needed to look onto this as well. And also I can give you just one example for my ward. It's a Dorset Road, to be honest with you. It's a 20 mile per hour. And especially onto the Dorset Road, that streets is like a through terrace houses. Through terraces mean they're mostly 90% of the family houses with the children. And the people are even during the day like this times are doing the speeding and been working with police, especially with the young children are out and about crossing the road because it's a long road. Off Dorset Road is a number of the streets comes off. Families or children go, cross the road with the thing is, and that is a really, really dangerous, to be honest with you. And also one final thing I'm like to go to say, Chair, and I think in my ward are making it with the two things with the drinking, driving and overspeedings, especially for the late evening because of the food and getting alcohol. So many shops in Hagels attracting to the people to coming into the Hagels. Could be late night after 12 o'clock at night, and especially the food as well. Especially I'm going to say about the Eastleigh Road. It's a 40 miles after 11 o'clock, even after 8 o'clock, dual carriageway. When the people have a drink or try to get the food or something, that's other things, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Councillor Hayden, Gary, you want to come back, or is it Councillor Hayden?
Yeah, if I just come back on some of Councillor Hussain's points, and I think Paul might want to come on a couple. Yeah, we acknowledge and agree that in certain areas across the city, outside peak hours, speeding is a problem. And some of the action that we're taking recently has been a result of being aware of that and trying to respond to it. So again, it's about that communication and trying to change behaviour, isn't it? About why do they think it's acceptable in those sort of hours to do that? I think enforcement, yeah, I think that clearly has a role to play. And it's a bit like the road marking and road signing point. I'd certainly like to do more road marking and road signing maintenance work. We do quite a bit, and it's very effective. In my view, it's fairly low cost per metre, but obviously the city the size of Leeds, that becomes a big number quite quickly. But we do put quite a bit of resource into that, but there's always a wish to do more, and I'm sure that's the same with enforcement. And on that point, Paul, did you want to come in?
I think the points you make are really helpful. We are under no illusion that we have a significant challenge around enforcement. We would much prefer to go down the education route, but we reserve the right to lay the full weight of the law against these people who persistently fail to adhere to safe driving practices. And we'll continue to do that. In terms of the communities that are affected by these ongoing problems, these repeat problems, I'd sort of go back to the point I made earlier. Please tell us. We have a new array of tactics that we can apply through the neighbourhood policing teams and indeed the West Yorkshire Safety Camera Partnership. And I'm talking specifically about the community concern deployments that we make currently. That's a really significant development in our approach to tackling dangerous and inappropriate speed. I would just like to finish off by giving you a flavour of the scale of enforcement, which may not feel is enough currently from where you're sat, but in terms of enforcement across West Yorkshire, and 45% of it occurs in Leeds. Last year, my department processed 248,000 offences, a significant proportion of which were from automated speed cameras, both the static ones and mobile ones. About 210,000 were safety camera offences, and the remainder were as a direct result of officer-led enforcement. So we're talking very large numbers of offences that are being pursued, a proportion of which result in driver retraining, some of which result in fixed penalty and court appearances. And just to give you an indication of where we are in terms of the national stage, we clearly are dealing with big numbers. And outside the Metropolitan Police, we are the busiest force in terms of enforcement. Please don't interpret that as an indication that we necessarily have the most significant compliance issue. It's reflective of our commitment to enforce, detect, and encourage positive driver behaviour. And that's important. We look for offences perhaps more than in other areas and therefore detect more offences. But yes, there is still more to be done. And in partnership with the communities, by sharing information and concerns, we can focus our resources where it can have the most effect at reducing road-related risks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll now call Councillor Hayden for closing remarks on this item, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's been an incredibly interesting and valuable conversation again. I'm really want to thank the board actually over the last few years. I think what Ian said about the change in the conversation with the council is very much driven by the work done by this board. And I'll hope, I'm very much hopeful of the continued support for the work that's going forward from this board. And, I'm really pleased to have had the support over the last 2.5 years that I've been in this role. I'm not going to apologise for praising Nick for his work on the the average cars, and then the red light car and the powers that we've got in with Kate and Nick and the whole team, like putting it in. But I am incredibly grateful to Paul and the West Yorkshire Police, because if it hadn't been for their support of Nick and having that visionary and looking forward and saying, right, what can we do different, which Gary mentioned, what can we do different without that from the police and their relentless work on tackling this. We've just had the figures there of 248,000. That's a lot of police activity. And it's, and the processing of so the support we have from West Yorkshire Police is, and we're working in partnership, and we can't do this by ourselves. The council can't do it. The police can't do it by themselves. All the other different organisations can't do it by themselves. We have to work in partnership across all these things and with the people of Leeds as well. I think that perception of driver behaviour, because I'm not anti-car, I'm anti-people driving cars badly, and I know I get the emails saying, you're clogging up our roads, you're making sure we can't, Councillor Lane mentioned getting around the city efficiently. That doesn't mean fast. Getting around efficiently. I think that's a really good word to use. And what is the best mode of transport? What's your end result? If you drive into the city centre, where are you going to put the car? And we've all got these balances we've got a fantastic city that I want everyone to enjoy, but I want children to be able to walk across. My children never could from my mum's house to Manston Park because it's a 30-mile-an-hour, road. Still my 12-year-old, I'm saying, wait till granddad comes out and crosses you over. So it's about all of us. And Gary's point about it's a maximum speed limit. We don't have to drive to that speed limit and get annoyed when we can't. And I think about changing all our behaviours, about giving longer for your journey so that you're not getting stressed, so you're not, all those behaviour changes. The smoking analogy is really interesting. If you told me as, 19, 20-year-old that I'd be able to go out and Leeds and then not come home stinking of smoke and I might be able to wear the same clothes the next day because they don't stink of smoke, I wouldn't have believed you. But in 2006, we changed all that. So, we can do it we can have that behaviour change. And actually, Councillor Lay put the analogy with smoking. We've got rid of that risk to passive smoking that used to, but you're much more likely when you're speeding to kill somebody else as well as yourself. And that's why we have to tackle this as a public health, because that death is instantaneous. It doesn't build up over years of somebody going into a pub where there's too much smoke. It's here and now, and it's children, and the amount of children is increasing. And that is a tragedy, but it's preventable, as somebody who, that Chair mentioned about child loss and having experienced that, but in a way that could not be prevented. We have to work as a whole society to prevent these unnecessary deaths and serious injuries. So thank you, Chair, and thank you to the board for this morning.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayden. And on the note where you mentioned we can do it, I will make reference to the graduated driver's license on behalf of the board to write a letter. And I would also be seeking my opposition members as well, and with your support as well, with your name to that letter regarding the graduated driver's license, and we will continue to push. And I would also like you, Ian, to join us in signing that letter, if that is okay. So on behalf of the board, just want to say a huge thank you again from the bottom of our hearts. Each and every one of you, West Yorkshire police officers, Neil from West York, from WICA, thank you. Our able officers who have been doing a fantastic job, and thank you for your report, of which the contents are duly noted. And just to continue to reiterate the board's support for Vision Zero, and we would be expecting an update on this agenda in the new municipal year, and that will be next year. So thank you once again. You're not permitted to leave if you don't mind, so that we can just quietly finish up agenda items number 9 and 10. We're not going to be long. So over to Becky for agenda item number 9. Thank you very much.
Just really quickly ask members to note the work programme, and if I can just confirm that the nominees to the member working group for the community committee review will be councillors Buckley, Hamilton and Wilson as agreed in the pre-meeting. Thank you.
That was very brief. Thank you very much. Just before we finish, there is a member of staff that we would like to say a huge thank you to. Lots of us come in here and there is a lot of tech going on at the back office, making sure that, you know, people at home and the public can listen to our scrutiny debate and look after each and every one of us. Microphones working. Is a gentleman called Cal. Today will be Carl's last day with this scrutiny board, so he's actually retiring. So can I ask all board members to remain after this for a lovely photo with Cal, so that he can put us beside his bed and remember us for all the times that he has served the council. So Cal, on behalf of the scrutiny board for infrastructure, investment and inclusive growth, we want to say a huge thank you. I know he's watching. Just to say a huge thank you to you for all your years of service to Leeds City Council and of course to this board. So we are really grateful and we wish you every good luck as you retire, but don't be too tired and come back if you get bored. So thank you all for coming. Our next ordinary meeting will take place on I believe it is 7th of November. 1st of November, wow, the very first day of November at 10:30, and there will be a pre-meeting for all the board at 10:15. We also have a call-in meeting, members, so it's not the end of today. We should be back at 1:30 in here. So you have a little break, go and have a cup of tea again, something to eat, and please do come back for 1:25. To all our guests, thank you again so much and have a good afternoon. Take care. Thanks.